Speaker. I just want to touch on two issues really on the bill around fees and enforcement, because I want to put on record my thanks to the Lewis Citizens Advice Bureau, who did extensive research for my adjournment debate back in May 2016. And while in the explanatory notes of the bill it says that on average letting agents' fees are around £200 to £300, in my constituency, probably because it's in the South East, on average it's roughly between £200 to £1,000 just in letting agents' fees, which on top of 6 weeks deposit and 6 weeks rent in advance can be £2,000 to £3,000 that someone has to find in advance. So this legislation will make a huge difference to tenants in my constituency in Lewis. But I do have some concerns about, we raised this in second reading and at Bill Committee as well, about some of the default fees, and I'm really pleased to see the Government Amendments 5 and 6 today, which really kind of tighten down on that, because I'm a patron of, as in my register of members' interest, of the charity HomeLink, who provide over £100,000 of support to tenants looking for deposits in the Lewis district, and they are still slightly concerned about the default payments, but the amendments in 5 and 6 are really welcome, because they tighten up what those default payments are, that they have to be listed in advance in any tenancy agreement. There has to be evidence that those fees actually exist. I won't, just simply because of the time constraints ahead of us, but also that they will, if they're found to be in breach of those, they will then be liable to those penalties and prosecution. So I am more reassured than I was at the start of the debate, and I welcome the Minister with his, for his listening ears, because he has really tried to listen to all members on this. In terms of the enforcement issue, I still remain concerned, not because of the legislation, but because the failure of enforcement with the existing legislation requiring letting agents to publish their fees. I welcome that district councils in Clause 7 will be able to keep the penalties that are brought forward, and I very much welcome the Minister's announcement today that there will be £500,000 for upfront loading for those councils, that they will be able to invest in staff to be able to start taking on the enforcement. But I just want to push him to say what happens if that still doesn't result in enforcement, because we will be no further forward with this brilliant legislation if enforcement doesn't happen. And I put on record again another interest that I'm a Vice President of the LGA who asked for this upfront loading money. If we're giving councils the money in advance, they're able to keep the penalties. They really must step up to the mark now and enforce this legislation, because it will make such a difference to tenants' lives if they know in advance what fees they'll have to pay, if they know those fees are really evidence-based, and if those fees are then abused, that there will be prosecutions and severe penalties. And I can't support the opposition's amendment simply because we've got a Schedule 1 in the legislation which sets out which fees will or will not be liable. But in the opposition's amendments, they just put some examples of fees, and that's not really strong enough. It would severely weaken the legislation that we have in front of us. So I congratulate the Minister, who's done a fantastic job in listening to everyone, but I'm still got some slight concerns about the enforcement and the default payments. I'm very happy to support this bill.
So Christopher Chope.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it's a pleasure to be able to speak in